Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our third live lesson for grades 6 through 8. My name is Jennifer Jones, and I am the Director of Curriculum here at Top Score Writing. I am so glad you have all tuned back in as we continue discussing introduction paragraphs. So let's take a moment before we jump into today's activity and review what we have talked about in our last meeting. I'm going to transition to the document camera. Perfect. All right, so in our last meeting, we began talking about introduction paragraphs, and we wrote our very first one. We wrote our introduction paragraph in response to the Gold Rush text set. Now, just as a quick refresher, because I know this was last week that we all met, we had previously read this nonfiction text set that was all about the Gold Rush. It contained a few different sources. Source number 1 was titled The Gold Rush. And source number 2 was entitled Gold Rush Entrepreneurs. Now, in our very first meeting, we analyzed the prompt, which was write in an expository essay about the history of gold in California. We identified the keyword expository that helped us to set our purpose for writing. We know that whenever we see that keyword expository, we are being asked to write an essay where we inform, teach, or explain something to our reader. Now, anytime we see the keyword expository, we know that's our purpose. We might also see the keyword informative, explain, inform, or teach. Any of those words would help us to understand as the writer what our purpose is for writing this particular essay. So the prompt is where we always look to set our purpose, our task, to get an idea of who our audience is, and most importantly, to determine what genre of essay we're being asked to write. So we know that we're going to be writing an expository or an informative text-based essay in response to this prompt. Now, after we read this prompt very carefully to ourselves, we began planning. And we learned that when we plan for an expository or an informative essay, we plan using an ITC outline. Now, ITC is an acronym. I stands for introduction, T stands for topics, and C stands for conclusion. So our ITC outline looks like this: I, T1, T2, T3, and C. Now, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 parts of this ITC outline. This outline is going to be developed into a 5-paragraph essay. So we will have an introduction paragraph. We will have 3 middle paragraphs. Those are our T's. And then we will have a conclusion paragraph. Now, our middle paragraphs, our T's, those are our topics. Those are big ideas. Those are topics that come from the text set. They come from the sources themselves. And there's a lot of information about each of these 3 topics. And these topics, as you can see, are very different and unique from one another. Now, in addition to identifying 3 big ideas that we wanted to discuss in our essay, we also identified 2 subtopics for each middle paragraph. Now, the subtopics we call our A's and our B's. And you will notice that each middle paragraph has 2 subtopics. So we have T1, AB, T2, AB, and T3, AB. Now, if you're not familiar with planning with subtopics, I know that can sound a bit confusing and overwhelming. So think of subtopics like this. They are simply details or examples of the big topic. So let's take a look at our T1. This topic, the very first thing we wanted to write about is where gold comes from. We identified 2 subtopics, nuggets and panning. Now, these are details about where gold comes from. Gold is found in the form of a gold nugget, and people discover it by panning for gold. Now, all of this information, our T1, our A, and our B, all came directly from the text set. When we were planning, we were constantly referring back to our text set to find things to write about. So we identified this first section of source 1 as having a lot of information about where gold comes from. So that's why we chose that for our first big topic. We put a large box around those 3 paragraphs and we labeled it T1 because this is the portion of the text set that corresponds to our T1 topic. When we selected our A subtopic to be nuggets and our B subtopic to be panning, we also labeled the places in the text set where we can find information on those subtopics. So paragraph 1 and paragraph 2 are going to have information about gold nuggets. Paragraph 3 is going to have information about panning. This strategy is called boxing and labeling because we put a large box around the information that corresponds to our T1 paragraph, and then we labeled our subtopics. We continue to use that strategy as we plan for our T2 and our T3 topic. So keep in mind, our writing task is to write an expository essay about the history of gold in California. We're going to begin by talking about where gold comes from. Then we're going to talk about the 49ers. Those are the people that first came to California when gold was first discovered, and they were really the ones that made this into a whole industry. Our subtopics or our details or examples about the 49ers are where they came from or where they lived, and that was in California. And then our B subtopic is all about the problems and the obstacles that the 49ers faced. Again, in our text set, we boxed and labeled the information that pertains to our T2 paragraph, and then our A's and B's are clearly labeled. So we know exactly which paragraphs talk about each of our subtopics. The third big thing we decided to write about was about the businesses that then grew in response to the needs of the 49ers. So there's a ton of men and women who discovered there's a huge need for supplies and food and panning materials and housing, that these 49ers needed an entire town, an entire way of life. And so there's a lot of entrepreneurs that seized upon this opportunity and created their own businesses. So that is the topic for our T3 paragraph. Specifically, we're going to give two examples. Our A's and B's are examples of the businesses that grew during this time. The first example, our A subtopic, is about a man named Samuel Brannan, and our B subtopic is about a man named Levi Strauss, and that might sound familiar to you. In our text set, we labeled where we found information for our T3 topic, and that's in all of these paragraphs. We boxed information for our T3 paragraph, and then we labeled the paragraphs where we will find information about our A subtopic and our B subtopic. So this is what we did our very first time we met. We analyzed prompts. We planned using an ITC outline, and we learned how to box and label. Now, the last time that we met, we began writing our essay. And you'll see in pink, there's a big box around introduction, around the I paragraph, because that was the very first paragraph that we focused on writing last time we met. We learned one way to structure an introduction in session number 2. There's lots of different ways we can write introduction paragraphs. You could probably write an introduction for this essay in 20 different ways, and they would all be appropriate and correct. We only learned one simple structure last time. We learned to write an introduction that had 3 parts. It had a hook, which is a sentence designed to get your audience's attention, to hook a reader, to make them interested. Then we wrote a 3-topic sentence. Now, this is a sentence where we state the central idea of our essay and the 3 topics that we wrote about. So if we refer to our plan, our central idea is always going to come from the prompt, and it's going to be what we wrote next to I. Our 3 main topics are what we wrote next to T1, T2, and T3. So that is the information that we wrote in our 3-topic sentence. As a quick reminder, we are not going to be mentioning our subtopics, our A's and B's, in the introduction. These are a surprise. We saved those for the middle paragraphs. So again, we're just mentioning the I, T1, T2, and T3 portion of our outline in the introduction. And then the third part of our introduction paragraph was a closing statement. Now, this is just a general sentence about the central idea of our essay, the main idea of our essay. And this sentence is just designed to, as it suggests, close up our introduction to help our reader transition from the introductory paragraph into the middle paragraphs. So let's go ahead and review the introduction paragraph that we previously wrote. California became a very popular state when people heard of gold being discovered. Gold is interesting because of where it came from, the 49ers who found it, and because of the big business it helped to create. The gold rush was an important point in history that made people rich. So that is our very first introduction paragraph that we wrote together. It has a hook, you see underlined in pink, a 3-topic sentence you'll see underlined in blue, and a closing you see underlined in green. All right, now today we are going to continue working with introduction paragraphs, and we're going to write another one. So go ahead and get out your moon materials. You also have these from our previous lesson. So there is a text set that is all about the moon. It contains source 1 titled The Moon. Source 2 is called Eating on the Moon. And source 3 is called Keeping Clean on the Moon. So we have previously read this text set and we have planned for this prompt. So let's quickly review the prompt that we created in our second session before we jump into writing the introduction paragraph for this essay. As a quick reminder, our prompt is write an expository essay about life on the moon. This is the plan that we have created. So our central idea is all about life on the moon, right? So we write that next to I and C. Now remember, when we're writing our ITC outline, we never write in complete sentences. We only write a few words next to each part of the outline. It is short, to the point. The purpose of an outline is to create for all of us a map or a plan for our essay so that we know what we're going to write about at the beginning, in the middle, and then in the end. We have specific topics and details and examples to include in each of our paragraphs. But our plan is not graded by our teacher. Our reader will never look at our plan. Our plan is just for us. So we keep it as quick as possible, which is why we do not write incomplete sentences. So our central idea is all about life on the moon, right? The 3 big topics we're going to write about in our paragraph, or excuse me, in our essay are about the characteristics of the moon, specifically what it looks like and what the weather is like. We're going to write about eating on the moon. That's such an important part about life on the moon, right? We're going to talk specifically about freeze-dried food. That's an example of what you would eat on the moon. And then we're going to give a really important detail, the fact that astronauts report having very little to no appetite due to the lack of gravity. Our T3 paragraph, so this is our third middle paragraph, is going to be all about what it's like to try to keep clean on the moon. So how to bathe and do things of that nature. We're going to give some specific examples and details about keeping clean on the moon. For our A subtopic, we're going to talk about what it's like to bathe on the moon. Not as easy as it is on Earth. And then we're going to talk about what it's like to use the restroom on the moon. Again, some new challenges are going to arise. So this is our ITC outline that we have created to plan for our prompt. And now we are going to begin writing. So today we are going to be writing this introduction paragraph. Now, your plan that you created for the moon may look exactly like mine if you copied what I wrote as I was creating it, or your plan may look different from mine if you planned on your own. Either way, you are perfectly okay. If your plan looks different than mine, that is awesome. You are going to be writing a unique essay. You will be writing in response to your plan as I write in response to mine. I know some of us did join late though, and were only able to copy my plan. If that is the case, that's fine too. We will just be writing in response to the same plan. So I just wanted to make that clear so that everyone knows that either your own unique plan or using my plan is appropriate. So today, to participate in the lesson, you are just going to need your text set about the moon, your ITC outline, whether it looks like mine or it looks unique, and a blank piece of paper. You can use a notebook. You can use a piece of lined paper, whatever you have handy. So I'm going to go ahead and give everybody a moment just to gather those 3 materials, make sure that they have them and they're ready to write the introduction paragraph. And while I'm thinking about that, actually, I'm going to leave this ITC outline displayed. In case this is the very first time you are joining us, if so, welcome. Go ahead and copy down this ITC outline on a blank piece of paper so you have it for today and future lessons. So I'll give everybody a moment to gather their materials or copy this plan if necessary. All right, is everyone ready to begin? Excellent. So let's go ahead on a blank piece of paper and begin writing our introduction paragraph. Now, today we are going to write an introduction that is structured a little bit differently than the introduction we wrote on Thursday, because I really want all of us to understand that there are so many different ways we can structure an introduction. Now, every introduction should do the same types of things. It should get your reader interested. It should clearly state the central idea. And it should usually clearly state the 3 topics that are going to be discussed in the essay. You don't have to always state your 3 topics, but it's usually a good idea. That way your reader has a really clear understanding what your essay is going to be about. So the structure we're going to be writing today is going to begin with a hook. And then we are going to state our central idea and our topics. But we are going to state our central idea and our topics in more than one sentence. So when we were doing our Gold Rush introduction, we took our 3 topics and we wrote them all in one sentence, right? Today we are going to write our central idea in 3 topics in 2 or more sentences. So I will write 2+ sentences. So our introduction is not going to be any shorter. This is a plus. It's not going to be any shorter than the introduction paragraph we wrote for the Gold Rush. Instead, we will have a 1-sentence hook, and then multiple sentences will be used to state the central idea and the topics. So we do not need to have a closing statement in this structure unless we want to. Our introduction is still going to be an appropriate length. As a good rule of thumb, the minimum length of your introduction should be 3 to 4 sentences. At the middle school level, they are oftentimes going to be even longer than that, but a minimum of 3 to 4 sentences for an introduction is a great place to start when you're writing a 5-paragraph essay. So let's go ahead and write a hook. Now, remember, there are so many different ways that you can hook your reader. You can ask them a question. You could share a fact or a statistic from the text set. You could make up a riddle. There are countless different ways you can get your reader's attention. I'm going to give each of you a moment now to think of your own hook. So I want everybody to come up with a unique hook. So your hook's not going to sound like mine, not going to sound like your friend sitting next to you. Everyone come up with a hook about life on the moon. You can ask your reader a question. You can make a statement. You can share a fact or a statistic. You can make up a riddle. Okay, go ahead and make up a hook now. So I'll write mine while you write yours, and then we'll share. All right, everyone, did you finish your hook? Excellent. Okay, I'm going to cover mine up because I don't want you to see it yet. Let's take just a moment and share some ideas. So maybe you started with a question. Maybe you started with a hook that said something like, how much do you really know about life on the moon? Or what do you think it would be like to live on the moon? Or did you know that living your daily schedule on the moon would be a very difficult task? Or maybe you came up with an even more unique question. Maybe you came up with a riddle. Perhaps you restated the prompt. Maybe you said something like, astronauts can now visit the moon. Or maybe you said something of the nature like, although there are many challenges, astronauts have found a way to live successfully on the moon. Maybe you went back to the text set and you found a fact or a statistic that was super interesting and you used that to begin your essay. Or maybe you just made a statement about the central idea, and that is what I did. So any of those options would be correct. My hook is, you can look up into the dark to see the brightest and largest object in the sky, the moon. So here I'm using a little bit of information from the text set, and I'm introducing our central idea in a way that hopefully is interesting to my reader. So this is my hook, and I'm going to go ahead and underline that for you in pink. You do not need to underline yours at the moment. I'm just underlining it to make it very clear to you the structure of my introduction paragraph. So the first part of our introduction is a hook, and that is the sentence I just wrote and underlined in pink. All right, so now we are going to move on to our second part of our introduction. Now here's where we state our central idea. So who remembers what the central idea of our essay is? Remember, it's going to always come from the prompt. It's what we wrote next to I and C on our ITC outline. What's the central idea? Life on the moon, right? That's what the whole essay is supposed to be about. Now, what are our topics? Well, we have to look back at our ITC outline to learn that. So our topics are going to be characteristics of the moon, eating on the moon, and keeping clean. Are we writing about our A's and B in our introduction? We are not. Those are a secret, right? We're going to save those as a surprise for the middle paragraphs. So we're only going to be writing about T1, T2, and T3 in our introduction paragraph. Now, let's do this part together, because what I really want to show you today is how you can write a 3-topic sentence, and our central idea in 3-topic sentence, where you're not just listing all of your topics smushed together in one sentence. I want to show you how you can separate them into multiple sentences. This is going to allow you to add a little more information, a little bit more detail, a little more description to each of your main topics. So go ahead and follow along with me as I write this. You can write it as well. If your topics, though, are different than my topics, then you can write about your topics. You don't have to write about mine, because I know some of you have your own unique plan. So my first sentence is going to be talking about my T1 topic. Mine is the characteristics of the moon. If yours is the same as mine, go ahead and copy this sentence. If you have a different T1 topic, then you write about yours. So my first sentence is going to say, the moon is fascinating to learn about because of its unique characteristics. Okay, so here's where I've stated my central idea and my very first topic. Now, if we forgot what our topics are, so many pieces of paper. First topic was characteristics. So I have one sentence that states my central idea and my T1 topic. The moon is fascinating to learn about because of its unique characteristics. Now I'm going to write another sentence or two about my T2 and T3 topics. So I'm going to write about eating and keeping clean. If you have different T2 and T3 topics, that's okay. You're going to write about your 2 topics. Now, I want to show my reader that the topics that I am writing about are related to one another and that they are all connected to my central idea. So remember, we're informing our reader about the moon, what it's like to live on the moon, and we want to show our reader how the characteristics of the moon, eating on the moon, and keeping clean on the moon are all related to one another. So I am going to use a transitional phrase here that is going to make it very apparent to my reader that these topics are connected to one another. So I'm going to say, due to these characteristics, astronauts must tend to their basic needs such as eating and keeping clean, differently on the moon. Okay, so let's take a moment and debrief on what we just did here. So first we wrote one sentence stating the central idea, which is life on the moon, and our T1 topic. So let me underline that for you. The moon is fascinating to learn about because of its unique characteristics. So that was our T1 characteristics. Then I wanted to state for my reader my T2 and my T3 topic, which are eating and keeping clean. And I know those are my T2 and T3 topic because I'm constantly referring back to my plan, and that's what I wrote next to T2, and that's what I wrote next to T3. But I also wanted to show my reader that all of these topics are related to one another. They all connect. So I use this phrase, due to show my reader that there is a connection. I said, due to these characteristics, astronauts must tend to their basic needs. So basic needs is the category that encompasses eating and keeping clean. Eating and keeping clean are both examples of your basic needs. So due to these characteristics, astronauts must tend to their basic needs, such as eating and keeping clean, differently on the moon. So now from these sentences underlined in green, my reader knows what this whole essay is going to be about, both the central idea and then the three main topics. And my reader has an idea of how these topics are connected and interrelated to one another. Now, I could stop here because I wrote 1, 2, 3 sentences. And remember I said our introduction paragraph should be a minimum of 3 to 4 sentences. So we could stop here and this could be the entire introduction paragraph. A hook, the central idea, and the topics stated in 2 or more sentences. But I could also write a closing statement if I wanted to. So let's be overachievers today. Let's shoot for the moon, no pun intended. And let's also add a closing sentence to our introduction paragraph. Now, again, this is just going to be a sentence that is about the central idea, living on the moon, and it's going to bring our introduction to a close, right? It's going to wrap that introduction, help transition our reader into the middle paragraphs. So we just want to say something basic here. So I think I'll say something like, living on the moon would be a difficult task. It's definitely going to be challenging, right? But an extraordinary experience. Okay, that just summarizes my introduction nicely, I think. Helps to bring my introduction to a natural close. So again, our closing statement is living on the moon would be a difficult task, but an extraordinary experience. So now my introduction is 4 paragraphs, or excuse me, 4 sentences. 1, 2, 3, 4. This is an appropriate length for an introduction at the middle school level. Now, before I finish this paragraph and move on, I know that I always need to reread it and look for what we like to call fast brain mistakes. Our brains think so much faster than our hands are able to write, so we always make silly mistakes when we're writing our first draft. We leave out words or leave out punctuation. Sometimes we forget to capitalize proper nouns or the first word in a sentence. So we always are going to reread what we wrote, look for any of those mistakes that we can quickly and easily fix. So I'm going to go ahead and reread my paragraph now and edit it. Please go ahead and reread and edit your own paragraph as well. All right. I'm so glad I took a moment and go back and reread it to myself. I found a few things that I did want to fix to write a little bit more neatly, just to make sure everything was clear and easy to understand for my reader. Everybody, thank you so much for attending the third session of Top Score Writing's live lesson for the middle school grades. We had an excellent session today of reviewing how to plan with an ITC outline, reviewing how to box and label the information we put on our plan, and we learned a second way of writing an introduction paragraph. Great job today, everyone, and I will see you on Thursday as we dive into writing the middle paragraphs. Have a wonderful rest of your day.